In the 7th century, the Muslim world emerged from 2 civil wars that were to see the rise of one of the largest empires in human history. Today, we are going to be talking about the rise of the Umayyad Caliphate. The Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, had died in the year 632. During his lifetime, he experienced a series of revelations which he believed had been given to him by God, spoken to him via the angel Gabriel, or Jibril in Arabic. These revelations challenged the polytheistic practices of his contemporaries in the city of Mecca, where Muhammad criticised the corruption and greediness of the religious authorities. Muhammad focused instead on the need for pure and pious devotion to the one true God. The Prophet's message gained widespread support among the peoples of the Arabian Peninsula, and, by the end of his lifetime, it had resulted in the creation of a Muslim community based around the cities of Mecca and Medina. When Muhammad died, Sunni or Orthodox Muslims believed that his authority was succeeded by his companion and father-in-law, Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr in turn by 3 more companions of the Prophet himself. These were the Rashidun, or the rightly guided caliphs. Each caliph presided over a period of expansion and consolidation of the Muslim community's reach. The word caliph itself is sometimes translated to mean king or emperor, but the term actually implies more than that. The caliphs were rulers who had power not just in secular terms, but in religious matters as well. In the Christian world, this might be more equivalent to the roles of pope and king rolled into one. The 3rd caliph of the Rashidun, a man called Uthman ibn Affan, is of particular interest to us today. Uthman was from one of the wealthiest tribes in Mecca, known as the Banu Umayyad, or the Umayyad tribe. Uthman was elected as caliph by Muhammad's companions, the clan leaders of Mecca, in the year 644, following the assassination of his predecessor, Umar. Dangerous rivalries had evidently emerged between the tribes of the Quraysh, the group of Arab clans that controlled Mecca. Uthman was elected for the role of caliph partly because he would ensure that these tribes did not lose power to outsiders. As caliph, Uthman began to appoint members of his own clan to key positions in Muslim territories. In the city of Medina, he ruled with the counsel of his 2 Umayyad cousins. In Syria, Egypt and Persia, areas further afield now ruled by the Muslim community, he appointed his kinsmen as governors. Uthman also enlarged the territories of existing governors of the Umayyad tribe. Muawiyah, the governor of Syria, had his power expanded to include the neighbouring regions of Palestine in the west and Homs in the north. Muawiyah gained extensive military power, befriending local tribesmen in Syria to expand his army. He also gained military experience, capturing the harbours of Tripoli, Beirut and Tyre from the Byzantines. From here he took the fight to the Byzantines at sea, raiding Crete and Rhodes in 653. Muawiyah had his authority further strengthened by the Caliph Uthman, who granted his request to take possession of Byzantine lands that would help pay for his new, large army. Meanwhile, back in the Arabian Peninsula, Caliph Uthman's nepotism made him distinct enemies from among the Quraysh. As the Umayyad tribe gained positions of power and authority, such as had happened with Muawiyah and Syria, other tribes of the Quraysh felt left out. Muhammad's widow, Aisha, had also begun to criticise Uthman's method of rule and even his interpretation of Islam. A rebellion against him began in Egypt and Iraq that was incited by the displeased tribes of the Quraysh. When Egyptian rebels arrived in Medina, negotiation between the parties was on the table, and Uthman's supporters promised to make amends to the rebels in Egypt. On their way home, however, the Egyptian rebels intercepted a message from Uthman that demanded the Egyptian governor execute them when they returned back to their homes. Outraged, the rebels turned back to Medina and laid siege to the caliph in his home. This time, the crowd demanded nothing more than a new caliph. 2 days into the siege, rioting broke out that set the caliph's house on fire and killed some of those defending him. At the time of midday prayers, 2 Egyptians found their way over the walls of Uthman's home and killed him. Uthman's house was looted. It seemed that the beginnings of the Umayyad state were no more. The crowd now turned to the Prophet Muhammad's only living relative. This was a man called Ali ibn Ali Talib, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law. During the Prophet's lifetime, Ali had been a stalwart companion of the Prophet. He had served in his army and had married his daughter Fatima. In Shia Islam, Shia being the word for party, meaning the party of Ali, Ali is known as the rightful successor to Muhammad after his death. Ali had lost influence among the Quraysh since the passing of the Prophet Muhammad, but following Uthman's assassination in 656, Ali now appeared to be the best choice for Caliph. Ali, however, appeared to have turned down this offer. He would, after all, have to take the reins of the Muslim community at a time of turmoil. The last two caliphs had had short terms that had ended in assassination. Nevertheless, after some deliberation, Ali accepted the role. In the holy month of Al-Hijjah, in the Muslim calendar, Muslims across Medina came to swear allegiance to him. Unlike his forebears, Ali's power base, though, was not on the Arabian Peninsula. While the caliphs Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman had ruled from Mecca and Medina, the cities where Islam had begun, Ali moved his capital to Kufa in Iraq. Here he had built up support during his years that were spent out of favour with the Quraysh in Mecca. The problem was that now he ruled over a larger Muslim community, where most regional power outside of Iraq was held by the family of Uthman from the Umayyad tribe. Ali fought against this. He deposed most of the governors appointed by his predecessor Uthman, accusing them of corruption. This included the powerful Muawiyah in Syria. As you might imagine, Muawiyah did not react kindly to Ali's orders. He refused them and instead rallied his army, taking them into a long civil war against Ali that lasted for 5 years from 656 to 661. This war in Islam is known as the First Fitna, or period of turmoil. Muawiyah himself demonstrated to be a cunning general in battle. Conflict raged when the two armies met at Siffin, a town by the river Euphrates in Iraq. When Ali's army began to gain the upper hand, Muawiyah's forces placed copies of the Quran, the Muslims' holy book containing Muhammad's revelations from God, onto their lances. Muawiyah's forces chanted that the Book of God should be their true judge, not the battle. Conveniently for Muawiyah, this message went across quite well, and Ali's forces sheathed their swords and stopped the fighting. An agreement was reached between Ali and Muawiyah through arbitration that resulted in a peace, but then triggered its own problems. Some Muslims among Ali's forces criticised their leader for meeting Muawiyah halfway. They denounced Ali as their caliph and elected their own new one. They soon took to arms against Ali, leading to the second large battle in this civil war. This was the Battle of Narwan. Here Ali fought against an alliance of his critics known as the Kharijites, Arabic for those who had gone out or rebelled. The Kharijites were a particularly violent bunch who were known to interrogate and execute civilians on their campaign trail, dependent on their views on Uthman and Ali. The Battle of Narwan, however, was a significant victory for Ali. His army was superior in both strength and in number. The Kharijite army was all but wiped out, with the few survivors pardoned by Ali. But Ali's success against the Kharijite army was to catch up with him. Members of his own following, still sympathetic to the Kharijite cause, began to secretly defect to Muawiyah, that governor of Syria, who, in 660, was recognised himself as caliph by his supporters in Jerusalem. In January 661, Ali was assassinated while at prayer in the great mosque of Kufa, Iraq. The murderer was an Egyptian Kharijite, Ibn Bujam, who stabbed Ali with a poisoned sword. Ali, the last leader of the Rashidun, the 4 rightly guided caliphs, died of his wounds 2 days later. Ali's death was to see another shift in the centre of Muslim power. For Ali, this shift had been from Medina to Kufa in Iraq. Now, upon Ali's death, the seat of the caliph was to transfer from Kufa to Damascus in Syria. The person who now held all of the cards was none other than Muawiyah of the Umayyad tribe. Hearing of Ali's death, Muawiyah took his army to Kufa, which he entered in the summer of 661. Here he was recognised by the Iraqi Muslim community after an ultimatum to the people that they recognise Muawiyah's authority after 3 days, or be slain. Ali's son, Hassan, had succeeded his father, but after some argument and preparation for war, he too abdicated in favour of Muawiyah in return for some compensation. Hassan lived until 670, when he was allegedly poisoned on the orders of Muawiyah. With the demise of Ali and the abdication of Hassan, the new Umayyad Caliph Muawiyah resumed the difficult job of controlling the diverse religious and tribal makeup of the Levant. In his early years, Muawiyah had conquered large areas of the Byzantine Empire which had been predominantly Christian. He now ruled these people in a careful balance of friendship with the local tribal leaders. His army was engaged in almost yearly campaigns against the Christian Byzantine Empire, which secured a steady income of loot. Loyalty to Muawiyah's rule in Iraq remained fragile, as many there continued to demonstrate support for the deceased Ali and even the strict religious practices of the Kharijites. As in Syria, Muawiyah relied on local leaders to govern on his behalf and formed good relations with the leaders of the Thaqif tribe, to whom he gave a great deal of independence in return for loyalty. As in the civil war with Ali, Muawiyah showed himself to be a clever leader who relied on carefully cultivated networks of loyal followers to consolidate his rule. The big break from his predecessors, however, came in the appointment of his son, Yazid, as the next caliph. The creation of a dynasty was a controversial move in the Islamic world and resulted in another civil war, known to Muslims as the Second Fitna. Although Uthman had given his fellow tribesmen position of power, no caliph before Muawiyah had made the role hereditary. When Muawiyah died in 680, his son Yazid faced immediate and significant threats to his inheritance. In Iraq, the son of Ali and only grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, Hussein, led a revolt against Umayyad rule. In response, the local Umayyad governor levied his army and clashed with Hussein's forces at the Battle of Karbala. Hussein was killed, a tragic end to the only grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, whose death still holds immense religious significance to the Shia community today. Another uprising came from the grandson of Abu Bakr, Ibn al-Zubayr, who led a rebellion in Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula. Yazid's forces marched down to the holy city, looting Medina on their way and laying siege to al-Zubayr at Mecca. Yazid's army famously attacked even the Kaaba itself and set fire to its black cloth, the Kiswa. The siege ended, however, when Yazid himself died, for reasons that are unknown, in 683. Ibn al-Zubayr now declared himself the caliph. The picture of who was in control at this time was very confusing. Umayyad rule continued in the north with the accession of Yazid's son Muawiyah II. However, this caliph was ill and his rule was short-lived. He died only a year later in 684 with no successor. From this nadir, another Umayyad was eventually selected as caliph by the tribal chieftains in Syria. This man, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, was to rally the Syrian forces against his rival, Ibn al-Zubayr, and force al-Zubayr's governor out of Egypt in 685. Marwan's son, Abdul-Malik, was able to reclaim territory in Iraq for the Umayyads, scoring a victory for them at the Battle of Maskin in 691 against al-Zubayr's brother Musab. The following year, in 692, a pro-Umayyad army commander laid siege to Mecca itself and put an end to Ibn al-Zubayr. Finally, the Caliphate was reunified under a single Umayyad caliph, Abdul-Malik, ruling from Damascus in Syria. The Umayyad Caliphate went on to rule the Islamic world for another half-century. At its height, it ruled an area of over 4 million square miles, making it one of the largest empires in history. Under its rule, key cities in Syria, Damascus and Aleppo, thrived with new buildings and magnificent architecture. The Caliphate rubbed shoulders with the Christian Byzantine Empire, with whom it fought, but also traded, and many Christians that held prominent positions in the Umayyad court had come from the Byzantine Empire. But simmering under the surface of this great Islamic empire was the threat of violent uprising and religious dissatisfaction. These factors would lead to the Caliphate's undoing, when it too was overthrown by rebellion in the year 750. But that is a story for another time. Thank you for watching this episode of the History Chronicles. Please do like, subscribe and post your comments below as to what you think about the rise of the Umayyads. I'll see you next time for another dose of history.